Welcome to the first session of the Ad Club's Conversation With series. I'm Lee Nadler, founder of Sherpa Marketing and chairman of the board for the Advertising Club of New York. The Ad Club and the Andy Awards are committed to keeping the ad and marketing community connected, even while we are distant. We have created a virtual clubhouse, providing members with online resources to navigate during these times. One of these resources is starting today, our Conversation With series, an ongoing webinar in which I will have a discussion with thought leaders who are also Ad Club members. We hope these conversations remind you that we're all in this together and that the Ad Club of New York, your club, is here for you. Please note that we will be posting questions that I've received already when you registered. And also, if you want to submit a question, please do during this time. And toward the end, we'll get through as many as we can. For our first episode of Conversations With, I am thrilled to introduce Cheryl Guerin. Cheryl is also a member of the Advertising Club's board and is the Executive Vice President, North America, Marketing and Communications at Mastercard. She is responsible for driving brand preference and consumer affection. Cheryl joined Mastercard in 2000, 20 years ago.
It's officially 20 years.
That's so exciting. And we're so excited to have you here today. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm thrilled to be the first of this session. It's wonderful that you're doing this. And I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you. And we're going to cover a few things. We're going to focus on, during this time, how you and your team are managing things that we can all learn from. We're all doing different things with our teams. How your business is dealing with the challenges for your customers and different stakeholders. And I know you have several that make your business very interesting to share about. And then finally, we'll talk about some career advice, maybe some things to learn during this moment or things that you've learned earlier in your career that can be helpful during this time. So why don't we start with the team and share a couple of things that you and the team are doing to manage day-to-day, week-to-week, restructuring, all kinds of things that we can all learn from.
So it's certainly a challenging time, and I would argue that our field in particular, it's about connecting, it's about bouncing creative ideas off of each other, and actually being separated isn't the easiest right now, right? So we've done a few things to try and keep this connection going. First of all, because everything is so fluid right now, frankly, we do a daily call with my directs. So I keep asking if we're okay still doing it. Is it overkill? But everybody seems to like it because we all get to speak to each other once a day to check in on each other personally. And frankly, we get to keep up with the latest information going on from a work standpoint. But then there's also fun ways to stay together as a team. And frankly, we've been focused on doing several of these, but one that we just instituted last week I thought was terrific was, when you're at the office, there are these, you bump into people, the water cooler bump in, the coffee hub, and that's where you get to see somebody unexpected and you actually catch up and see how things are going with your friends, your family. And maybe it's a work thing and maybe not. And so what we did was we created the virtual water cooler experience. And so we set 15 minutes out of everybody's calendar. We wound up, there were a set of people that were determined would be the callers. And then we had groups of 3 in these groupings, and we all turned on our video capability and got to speak to each other, about what's going on in people's lives. Oh my goodness, speaking of which, sorry about this.
That's all right. I'll do some filler here. I'm going to drink some water.
I shut off the phone.
I'm doing some water during the water cooler talk. You have any water?
There you go.
You have any?
I've got mine too. The other is We even created a playlist that we all listened to. And we created songs, you know, that we love. We created songs of the moment. Mine was Don't Stand So Close to Me by the Police. So there, you know, and so we're doing a variety of these things to stay connected, have little moments of fun, and keep the work going.
I love that. Yeah. And it's kind of, as you just touched on, like a way to connect with people in a way that's familiar with the water cooler. So I love that notion, just to try to keep some semblance of normalcy. But also I love how I want to touch on this, how you teamed people up who maybe wouldn't have an interaction because they're not in the same department or something. Like,
That's right.
just real quickly, like how do you set that up if other people want to do that? Because I love
Yeah.
that idea.
I mean, and the part of it was the surprise. You didn't know who was going to be calling you. You didn't know who was in your group. So it was a little bit of a surprise as well. And so it was the idea of somebody on our team, and we had them literally block the time, and they set up, you know, the random list of who would become the callers and random sets of people that would be part of it, those groupings, and then essentially really simply gave each other a call, gave people assignments. I was happy for once to not get an assignment. I got called instead of having to be the callee.
Oh, that's
The
cool.
caller.
Nice.
By the way, virtual brainstorming, we've done a few of these too. And
Oh, cool.
actually, what we all said was it was a breath of fresh air to actually pause for a moment from everything that we're doing in the moment and actually take some time out to think. And we did the same type of thing, small groups of 6 people in groups like this over Skype or Zoom, and it worked beautifully.
I love that. And did you like come up with different topics, and did you need to have a moderator, or did everyone just kind of figure it out on their own in each group?
We had our agencies with us, and we had my team, and we broke up into groups that would tackle a couple of different areas of focus for us right now, whether that was you know, they were business related topics, right? So we started with insights, everything that was going on with consumers, with small businesses. What are the needs? What are the things we have to kind of shift right now that we never expected? And so we use that as a way to create, you know, sessions on each of these topics.
I love that. And I love that. I just want to highlight it. I love that idea of figuring out also ways to connect with your agency that aren't always an assignment-based thing, because we're all trying to figure out how to connect in different ways now. And so what a nice way to connect your brand marketing team with the agency. And did you see like a different dynamic than normal?
You know, everybody was a little worried about how it would go. You know, could we really pull this off over the phone? And, you know, the toughest thing is the readout, right? So because how long can you keep people on a phone? And so what we decided to do is do the readout separate. And so this worked, we broke it up. But the dynamic was fantastic. It was like we were in the room together. And shockingly, technology like this, where I could see you right now, Lee, and we're having a conversation, it was the same thing. So I think we're all learning that we have the ability to do things differently that we didn't think could work as effectively. And it was the good old same as any other brainstorm. Start with the insights, start with understanding, start with impacts on our brand, and then get into the specific topics. And it really worked well.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. And just for clarification, what you're saying is you did the brainstorm sessions on one day and then let people write it up and then share that the next day. So you didn't try and jam too much in. That's great.
We split it up because, again, we recognize just sitting, it's not the same as being in the room.
Right.
People do need a break and need a mental break. We did that too, right? I gave up my lunch hour today, but we blocked 12 to 1 as a lunch hour every day, because people, you don't realize just walking to a meeting or going to the cafeteria or out to get something to eat and coming back, no one gets a mental break. So we've been doing things like this too.
Oh, great. Awesome. I want to shift to the second area in terms of your business.
Sure.
So if you could maybe talk about how you're approaching, it must be a myriad of business decisions. So how do you
Yes.
organize them and how do you approach them?
So the first thing we did, and is now become a sort of our Bible that we follow, is create some principles and a framework for how we would think about the work we would do. As you could imagine, and I imagine many companies are getting called, or marketing departments and communications departments are getting a ton of different ideas, a ton of, different thinking coming over to them. Why don't you try this? Should we be doing this? And we created this framework. And that framework is around 3 buckets of activity and messaging that we would do. One is around how do we help people during this time and what's going on around us? How do we help? Second is how do we inform and educate on a variety of needs that people might now have? And that includes certainly our multiple business partners. It includes for us, we're a large B2C company, but we're really a B2B company. We don't have a direct to consumer relationship. That's our banks or merchants. And therefore informing and educating them is important as well. And then, so it's help, inform, educate. And then the third bucket is enable. What can we do to enable people at this time with products, services, support, et cetera?
Oh, those are great. Those are very helpful buckets. I love that, they start with how are we helping, right? I think
Absolutely.
a lot of us are trying to figure out even the wording for that, right? And I'd love for you to just give some example. Maybe you can give some examples of each.
Sure. If I start with how we help, I'm unbelievably proud to say that we had a very quick response. And in fact, I looked up yesterday, it was March 12th and March 10th, and it feels like a lifetime ago already, actually. But on March 10th, we announced that we were working with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Welcome, and Mastercard, and we went in together to create a $125 million fund to accelerate the research to find a vaccination and a cure for COVID-19. And a lot of people said, why would Mastercard do this? And the reality is people need this. The economy is hurting. If the economy is hurting, everybody else, all of our businesses are hurting. If people are in need, that's what we're about, right? It's core to our brand. We're all about the priceless things in life. And what matters most is people and family and friends. And so therefore, it makes a ton of sense that we would jump in and do this right out of the gates.
That's amazing. No pun intended, right out of the gates.
Pun intended.
Did you ever use that one?
Yes.
Thought that was going to be debuted here. What about another example? How about an example for informing?
For informing. So for informing and educating, I mean, again, this is a dicey one for all of us right now. How much do you provide information on products versus brand right now? And of course, the priority is definitely brand right now. That being said, we happen to have a product that, well, we know people love it and it's important and it always drove convenience. This whole area of, creating a no touch and contactless environment has changed the whole dynamic of very much the contactless products that we offer. So we offer a feature right now on our cards where you could just tap and go and not have to, hand your card over, not have to spend extra time. But more importantly, in this day and age is we don't have to touch anything. And so that keeps us safe, the people with the cards, and then certainly the people working. And so we did this video that launched last week, which actually we could share with you now to better inform people about this offering.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Was that a tough internal decision of, the old saying, don't mess with the logo?
Oh, sure, for sure. I mean, if, we messed with the logo a little bit last year when we dropped our name from the logo. We dropped Mastercard from the logo, and so yes, we have these dialogues all the time. There goes this dog.
That's all right. We're all dealing with home noises and all that. It just adds a little human touch. That's fine.
Yes, yes, yes. I think she's about to get a walking right now, I hope. So let's see. Okay, so on the logo, we decided, if you noticed, we didn't end the film with the two logos, the two interlocking circles separated. We took it apart to say Mastercard contactless. We brought it back together to say we're united. So that was very purposeful to make sure we ended on what the logo is and what it stands for. I think one of the harder topics was whether we do anything around a product at all. And we found a tasteful way, working with McCann to do this. And obviously you notice that it's an icon, production, and no shooting or anything, but what a simple and powerful way to deliver a message that this is in your hands already. You can use contactless if you have a card that's contactless, or it's in your phone and you could use your phone to tap and go. And so you don't have to touch anything. And we're equally educating and informing our merchants. As a reminder, we resent out a bulletin and some marketing materials to our merchants that you're not required to ask for a signature at the point of sale. We got rid of that 2 years ago, and some merchants are still lagging. And I personally can tell you my experience going to a store and having to pick up a pen a few weeks ago to sign, we have to do something about it. So we've been spending the time informing them as well.
Well, that's great. That's obviously a very, very useful and timely product. I want to pivot on, because we got a question that just came in that's related to the production that you just mentioned. Without
Yes.
going into too much detail, how are you dealing with production, content, commercial shoots, new creative, or are you mostly repurposing? I'm sure you have a tremendous amount of assets at your disposal, but how are you managing new creative and development?
Sure. It's the biggest challenge we have going right now. I think probably all of us. What we're doing, obviously you saw what we did there. The solution was we'll probably have a set of videos that look like what we just did. Through music, icons, and typography, we can deliver messages. And with, what's amazing is, and we've always featured people, we're about people. It's Priceless is all about these moments that people have. But maybe to get information out right now, this seems like a logical way to go. We're also looking at how we use existing footage, et cetera, and re-edit what we have to have different meaning and new messages at this time. This is our biggest challenge, right? Is hitting the right chord right now. And we're lucky we have Priceless as a core. This is quite helpful. But certainly production becomes more challenging. And I think we found a creative solution here.
Right, very elegant indeed. Talk about Priceless for a second, because I know Priceless has a lot of experiences that are in person. How did you shift Priceless?
Yeah, that's a perfect segue to that last bucket, which is how do we enable people during this time? And as we look at how we enable people, people are ordering online, they're getting deliveries at home. And everybody's starting to get some cabin fever. So, and even entertaining people at home really matters. So Lee, this is exactly right. There's two things. We've always enabled these things like online shopping, et cetera. But what we are doing is we're providing our issuers and certainly sharing what consumers offers that we have for the likes of Postmates and Boxed and ShopRunner, things that people can do, get savings on these services that they're doing. And then the biggest challenge for us is what you just said, was we have an entire platform globally, which is all about getting priceless experiences that tend to be physical at sponsorships and sporting events, at culinary events and Broadway. And what do you do now in this era of, no one's going out? And so the team is quickly pivoting to virtual experiences. And so we'll launch that this week. But, really challenging if you think about it. We're all in the midst of taking our plans and completely replanning. And that's, I'm thrilled that the team's able to respond as we are. But it does require a complete rethink on everything.
Indeed. And have you thought about how you engage? You talked about the constituents earlier. So there's merchants, there's banks, which are going through obviously all kinds of decisions in terms of helping their customers and you being part of that process. And then obviously the consumers and partners. Is there anything else in there from the constituent standpoint, just because people are trying to think through like so many different decisions, and the way you're categorizing these and structuring them is, I think, really helpful.
Yeah, we've done it for every audience. So we look at how do we help inform and enable our consumers. We look at how we're doing that with our issuers and merchants. We'll make some announcements today that I can't say this moment on small business and how we're supporting that audience in particular, and a segment that has real needs, and we'll be working with our banks on that as well. And then just thinking about who we are, marketers, we have insights groups, and keeping a pulse on what's going on and what's going to be changed now, and then frankly forever. We're publishing a weekly insights report that we distribute around our company to our teams to share with our customers as well, which when we say our customers, I refer to issuers and merchants. So, there's a variety of ways, and this a set of data that we have as a company that we are working with our banks so that they can make the best decisions possible. Same with merchants.
Right. And of course, every industry has different constituents like that. When I was working for the BMW group, there's obviously customers, there's dealers, right? There's all kinds of different constituents that have to be thought about, and that's really important that you're doing that. You mentioned, and it's okay if your answer is it's too early to tell, but I love also that bucketing of, what's a change now and what's a permanent change. Like, I do think we're all, as we're being forced into this new creativity, we might be finding things that just make life better. Like, I know, for example, I do think some people will realize they don't have to fly to a business trip for 2 hours and, take their whole day to do it. Instead, like, this is, in some cases, an acceptable way to have a face-to-face meeting with people.
It's true. I think what people thought before wasn't possible, it changes significantly. One of the things we're doing is we're not only planning for today, we're thinking about what's going to happen when we emerge. We all have to be hopeful we're going to emerge from this, and we'll be stronger when we all emerge, and try to get people back to some semblance of normalcy, right? So people will emerge with some cabin fever. People will emerge germaphobes, and this is real. So, when we think about our merchant partners, they're rethinking their retail experiences for good, right? Not just for this moment, but, we all now will think about, how we're touching things a little differently than before. And then certainly top of mind is recovery for small businesses, without a doubt, and the travel industry as well. So, we're sort of replanning for today, and we're looking forward to a time where we can all get back to some normalcy and be there for our customers, be there for our cardholders as well.
Understood. Let's talk about the third area, which is career. You've had an amazing career. Again, congratulations on 20 years at Mastercard. That's impressive.
It's hard to believe. It's crazy, but It's been really exciting.
And I know you've taken a few different pivots, even though you're at the same company for 20 years. Can you talk about some of the decisions you've made in your career that led you to become successful, and also maybe some things that we should all be thinking about today as we try to deal with the realities of today and also try and look toward moving forward tomorrow?
Certainly. You know, one of the things that I've learned, and it was hard at first to think about for me personally even, was, you know, you have to actually move out of your comfort zone and take some risks in your career. It's a requirement for you to be stronger and better and have more diversity of thought in your own mind, and actually work with different types of people as well, and learn different things. So a couple of things happened in my career. One of them was really, I credit a woman that I used to work for at Mastercard who really pushed me. I was so set on always doing advertising because I just loved it, right? I always loved it. I was passionate about it. I came from the ad agency side of the business before I went over to Mastercard. And she really pushed me and said, but why? She said, you know, and it's right when, I know this sounds like impossible. It was ages ago because I think it was like 2004. She said to me, come on, do something different. You should get into digital marketing. We want somebody to run digital marketing here. And I want you to take that on for us, initially for the US and then globally. I wound up doing this. This was a pivotal moment for me. There's two things that I learned. One, you know, and she said it just like this to me, it's a whiteboard, and you could determine the direction of it at this point. And so one thing is when something's a whiteboard and it's brand new, nobody else knows what to do or how to do it. And so frankly, it's an interesting risk to take because within a couple of months, I became the resident digital marketing expert. So
I love that. Yeah.
You know, it's something to think about. It's scary, and it was scary. You know, could I do it? But you know, you use this skills that you have. You surround yourself with great people and partners, and you become an expert very quickly in something. And that led me to other jobs when people wanted somebody that had more digital experience. That led me to multiple other opportunities at the company. I also was asked again, like at one point, to do a general management job at Mastercard, which was looking over products and services in North America. And believe me, I hesitated and I thought, oh, do I really want to do this? I love marketing. That's what I do. And I did it, and it was such a wonderful experience. And I followed that up by leading global credit as well, where I got more global experience, which was unbelievably helpful in my career. And I think now when I look back at that's three and a half years, close to 4 years I spent out of marketing and then came back, it just makes me a better marketer now and a better business person for Mastercard. So I'm thrilled that I did it, and I would challenge everybody to take some risks. And I know it sounds crazy that right now I would say, hey, how about even right now? And it's not that risky. If you think about it, there's going to be lots of new things that have to be done. There's lots of projects that are being stopped, but new ones started. And now's the time to throw your hat in the ring and kind of say, hey, I'd like to try something different or work on a specific project. And that's a way we use skills, right?
Those are great examples. And, you know, just to kind of summarize it and connect the dots here. Sometimes people say taking risks, and, you know, it's funny looking back how, yes, that was a risk, but it was really more stepping out of your comfort zone, because the risky part was actually not doing it and limiting yourself maybe to, you know, one silo, if you will, right? You broadened your experience, which allowed you to be more valuable as a manager to others, because guess what? Now everything is digital. I remember, I'll date myself a little more than your 20 years, but I was at Kirschbaum and Bond when it was called that back in the day. And I left there to become the first head of marketing for DoubleClick in 1996. So these were the very early days of digital marketing, which it wasn't even called then. It was internet advertising.
Interactive sometimes.
Interactive, yeah. So imagine, I can't imagine in my career that what if I hadn't done that? You know, what it's now led me toward. So I do think for everybody to, maybe a good way to frame it, even getting rid of those simple expressions of take a risk or out of your comfort zone. I love the way you expressed it, which if it's a whiteboard opportunity that you can help define, go for it.
Yeah.
Guess what? You're not going to be wrong.
No one knows the answer, so you
Yeah.
can find it.
So helping to figure that out is only going to lead to new ways of thinking, new collaborations with teammates, and perhaps you'll find something that you love that you want to continue to explore.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'm going to jump now. We have a few minutes left for the Q&A. Thank you to those who have submitted questions. And I want to talk about a couple. Some are pretty specific, so we may not be able to get to all of them. Things like how this is affecting programmatic and out of home and so forth. Unless you want to talk about how you're shifting media approaches, that's up to you. If not, I'll ask you some other questions because I don't want to put you in a spot.
I mean, just really the biggest thing that we're doing is looking at content, right? We were about to launch a travel campaign in second quarter. That doesn't make sense. So we had to quickly pivot on content and, you know, work with our partners to figure out, do we postpone? Do we develop new creative approaches? And that's primarily what we're doing. You know, the next step would be, look, as we all are sort of in this unknown time, you know, I'm sure many brands are thinking about what's going to happen with the upfront. And, you know, this is where I'm hoping for some flexibility, you know, from our partners and, you know, versus these commitments that we, you know, you get locked into. But other than that, it's mostly about messaging, and then each initiative and what we're trying to do will drive the media. Obviously, out of home right now doesn't make much sense, right? We were about to do some other things out of home. We have to put a pause on that right now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We'll come back. It will come back. Yeah.
Right. And can you talk perhaps about how you're approaching the overall budget? You know, like what's your time frame on that, and how are you making decisions on the budget for marketing?
Yeah. So same sort of thinking. We're starting with what makes sense for the brand, what makes sense for the company, and determining what we should be putting on pause, you know, whether we postpone that work, you know, to this year, to next year. And so we're evaluating everything pretty methodically to understand, you know, what will make sense. And like I said, I mean, I could give you one example. We were thinking about using a former brand ad that we had, which we loved and adored. And it's, you know, it winds up being an online shopping experience. A box comes and it's a toy for the kid, for the little child, and the child decides to play with the box instead of the toy, something we could all relate to. And it has a beautiful priceless line and the whole thing. Reality is what happened, that was on the docket to maybe do. And then all of a sudden we learn how, you know, the boxes themselves could have the virus. And so we scrap that and we rethink. So everything is so fluid right now. You can't really plan everything perfectly right now.
No, there is no perfect. We're all navigating in some uncharted territory here.
Yep.
Maybe it's a who, or maybe it's just for you a process, but when you're ultimately having, like, that's a great example and something that thankfully you've got the info on time for, right? But how are you assessing, like, I'm going to put this message out there. Right now, at least it's the appropriate message. is there a checklist you go through, or how are you getting your info to make sure this is sensitive to situations, timely, and not stepping into a potential pitfall?
And I think that's where, again, you ease your way into certain things. When we released that video last week on contactless, we did it in very lightly to kind of get initial response and see how that went. If we put out significant amounts of spend, we will do what we've done in the past, which is we will test it. We'll talk to consumers and get a reaction, because we can still do that via this technology, right? So we'll still do gut checking and testing to make sure that what we put out there makes sense. But it does speak to being really careful. Our theory stays the same. The closer into brand we are at this moment, leaning on a brand that is steeped in experience and what matters to people. It's a very human, campaign, and just staying true to who we are is probably the best place to be right now.
I think that's great advice, not just for the brand, but for each of us as individuals, right?
Yeah.
You also mentioned something back from the team part that I just checked my notes on, which was doing something about your home, like working, showing.
Oh, right.
your home. And so maybe you can explain that.
I'm showing mine right now because I'm actually camped out at my kitchen island. My husband's in our home office, and the one that really rules the house, you all heard from Madison, our dog. And my kids are older, so they're probably still sleeping, by the way. So they're pretty easy to manage during this time. But we're doing something we want to share. Everybody's going to share their home office too. And we've been doing that. The executives are doing that. And we posted on something at Mastercard called the Hub, our intranet, where people can go see. And, everybody's interested. It's sort of like how we're all dealing with this and showing our work at home situations with all the fun, that brings, and the humanity that it brings along with us. So we're sharing those too. That's our next assignment. And that's one of the things I said to the team is they keep coming in. So, one woman did the playlist, we call it we're called North America Marketing. So we say the NAM Jams playlists that we created. And then somebody else came up with the surprise Skype idea that we talked about, the virtual water cooler. Yep. And the home office. And then we're just implementing each of these each week to give us some connectivity as a group. But again, with humanity, as you could see. Exactly.
Well, thank you for having a fireside chat in front of your fireplace.
I don't have it on, but it was getting the, it's close. It's close.
Nice. I'm sitting in the little office in our apartment. We live in the West Village, and behind me, I was asked about this earlier, is this pattern that's called the infinite knot that I got when I was trekking in the Himalayas years ago. And wow. So I put it up recently, and it's a good reminder for me about overcoming obstacles as we're trying to basically travel through this terrain that is tricky, scary, and mostly, I think, causing a lot of anxiety because of the uncertainty. Are you feeling the same thing in terms of just, we don't know when all of this is going to clear. We don't know how our lives are going to be affected. We don't know how our businesses are going to be affected. Obviously, most importantly, it's about health at this point. And I really do hope that everybody on this call that is listening, that you and your family and friends are healthy and safe. Can you talk a little bit maybe about just managing, even for yourself, that own, your own uncertainty and yeah. How do you keep yourself moving forward and motivated?
Yeah, I mean, no, it's interesting. I personally am motivated by others, and I, being around other people, and ideation and, new thinking and, and so keeping that going somehow, like we talked about earlier, is really important. Keeping that connection is so important. So we've been like these daily calls that we meet as my directs. It's so nice to hear their voices every day. It's so nice to connect and just check in and how's everybody doing. We do virtual happy hours too. I left that part out. And we're doing that personally too with my friends. Saturday night, we did a Zoom call like this with couples. We all grab a bottle of wine and, we're all chatting like we're out to dinner together.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. With family to celebrate birthdays. And so actually using this technology to stay connected is really important. And the other I mentioned before, sometimes this working at home, I'm surprised at how exhausting it is, right? Because there doesn't seem to be a break. So we did block 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning, and then 12 to 1. And we did it as a region. The entire North America region did it at Mastercard so that nobody would be bombarded with meetings for the most part. And honestly, just taking a break to walk outside with the dog, it's good. And I've also encouraged the team to take vacation days too. So I know we're not going out. I'm supposed to be in Italy right now for my vacation this week, which is so sad. And I think about that, but you know what? We're making the best as a family, playing games, having dinners together. And I'm going to take off on Friday and we'll do, a movie marathon with my sons. And so just
Nice.
keeping.
Maybe you can do Italian movies and eat Italian food.
I think Italian wine, food, and movies will work. This can work.
Yeah, I did see a wine rack behind your head. If you want to share that for us.
Yes. There's more too.
Okay. I did get one more question, and then we're going to wrap up here. And I think this is an important one from my friend Danny, who I think there's a lot of people in the media world who have ideas that they want to share with brands like Mastercard. Maybe just talk for yourself, or if you have any other thoughts. But, when I was at Mini, there was, a way of receiving ideas. Some were with partners that we've worked with before, would submit ideas, or I would go to a lot of conferences and meet people and, hear ideas. And I actually found it tremendously beneficial because you never know where these great ideas are going to come for, and you want your company to beat the competitors by getting the best ideas and working with partners. What is the best way during this period for ideas maybe that people have who are in the media business or production business or content business or otherwise to share an idea that they think is worthwhile and appropriate for Mastercard?
We've stayed connected. I've done a couple of media workshops already with partners that we've been working with. And so there's two different paths. If you're already working with brands, now's the time. I say this just like we'd say for our banks and our merchants, now's the time to be there for your partners. And that might mean they need flexibility. That might mean that they need new thinking and new ideas and new creative. And so I think anything is on the table, but they do need you now. And so the ability to do, a few workshops now, again, we'll take them from the existing partners, but then reach out to the media agencies, reach out to us, and we'll funnel it in the most appropriate manner and determine if it's something we want to pursue. Patience is important because things are a little crazy right now, but I think, now's the time to absolutely be there for your partners with new thinking. I think it's great.
I agree. And that's exactly what we're doing with the ad club here. This is the one club, the advertising club of New York is the club that works across the different segments of the industry. So brands like Mastercard, agencies, media properties, production companies, ad tech companies, et cetera, et cetera. And so this is really a forum, as is the virtual clubhouse, to come together and we've allowed at the Advertising Club for our members to be able to share things in that could be posted on the virtual clubhouse as well, of new tools and techniques that club members, be they brands, media properties, agencies, etc., can now be exposed to. So I encourage everybody to take advantage of that. While I'm on the housekeeping stuff, I'm going to share a couple of quick housekeeping things, and then I'm going to ask you one final question.
You got it.
So first of all, this is, again, the first of the Conversation With series. We are going to do this every other week is the plan. On the 21st of April will be Sophie Kelly from Diageo. And you mentioned happy hour. I heard she might do some kind of a whiskey pour or something that we can all learn, which would be great. So again, every other week at noon Eastern, and hopefully people can join us. And at the end of this, when we sign off in about a minute, there'll be a short, I guess, little question or two that it would be great for you to answer. And then you'll get info on how to register for the next one going forward. I hope everyone's really benefited from this. I want to thank you, Cheryl, so much for doing this, for having a conversation with me and with the Ad Club and with all the almost 200 participants out there today.
That's great.
And so my last question for you, and then I'm going to answer the same question, we'll do this each session, is what's a quote that you look to at a time like this for motivation or inspiration that you want to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. By the way, we're doing that too. We're sending around quotes of inspiration. I sent somebody the lyrics to Bridge Over Troubled Waters because I still love that song and the lyrics, and we need to be there for each other. That's what that whole song is about. But
you can sing your quote if you want to sing.
You don't want that, trust me. But there's a quote that it stayed with me for years, and it just inspires me as a marketer. And I had heard, a speech that Ron Johnson did years ago when he was opening Apple stores. And he basically said, there are believers and there are skeptics. And of course, he noted that Apple is filled with believers, and believers tend to think of what can be, and they just do it. And they don't spend time asking why not. They just go make it happen. And that's sort of my motto. And hopefully you've seen some of the Mastercard work that proves that out. There's been multiple things that we've done, but now more than ever, we need to be believers and not skeptics, and keep hope alive. And that's how good ideas happen, by actually believing in them and pushing them forward.
That's really wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. As I was thinking about mine, and I'm going to be doing this every other week, so I need to come up with some, because I'm going to do a different one each time. But I actually went to, I've been writing in a journal for many, 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 many years. So I have many of these books. And this morning, I wrote something that I'm going to just read as my quote. So, while everyone is being forced to keep distant, we seem to be getting closer. Namaste.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you in 2 weeks and in the virtual clubhouse right away.